Please join me in welcoming Diana Walker.
What a day. It's gorgeous. As you can imagine, I have many, many thoughts running through my head today about this garden and what it was like on a June day in 1959. Aren't you surprised I can still remember? Thank you, Kathy, for that very generous and thorough introduction. It is an honor to be the commencement speaker for the first graduating class under your leadership as head of school. To you graduates, many congratulations on all you have accomplished. You are about to embark on your next chapter of your life, but before you do, I encourage you to reflect on what you've achieved here at Foxcroft, the friends you have made, the knowledge you have gained, and the wonderful perspective you have developed. To your parents, I applaud you for the many, many investments of time, care, treasure, and love you have given your daughters. You have provided them with the opportunity to live and learn in one of the world's truly unique academic environments, and your daughters will carry the Foxcroft experience with them forever. I know I have. Class of 2015, the world I grew up in was very different from yours. Let me start by telling you a story about what life was like in 1980. It may amaze you, but it serves, I think, to show you how fast the digital age changed the world for me and for your parents and your grandparents. It also demonstrates the competition and rivalry between Newsweek and Time magazine. You think the Foxes and the Hounds were rivals. You can't imagine. Well, on the night of Ronald Reagan's first victory in November of 1980, two pilots sat at a diner in the Santa Monica airport. Jack turned to Charlie. "You won't believe what's going on in my charter tonight. My Learjet has been turned into a dark room by the guys from Time magazine. They are taking film from Reagan's victory party and processing it as we fly to New York, where it will be rushed to print for tomorrow morning's election issue. Isn't that amazing?" Charlie replied, "Yeah, pretty amazing. But the funny thing is, I've got Newsweek doing the same thing in my plane." Amazing as that seemed 35 years ago, and it really was unusual, today we shoot, edit, and transmit off a computer or a small cell phone. However much yours and my material worlds may be different, as graduates of this school, our values, what makes us who we are, I believe, are much the same. As a child in Washington, I fell in love with a camera in a pharmacy window on the corner. I built a darkroom in my basement where I would print my pictures, or I should say, try to print my pictures. Every time my father walked across the living room floor above me in our old federal house in Georgetown, dirt and sand rained down on my chemicals. Later, when boarding school was proposed, I jumped at the school with the most beautiful darkroom. It's true, Foxcroft. Here I found Mr. Hemingway, a math teacher who loved photography and who taught me about printing, and his wife, Chow Hemingway, who taught a wonderful course that gave me a love of art. Clearly, I spent too much time with my camera, or in the darkroom, or acting on the stage in the Foxhound, or battling the hounds on the basketball court. I wasn't a great student, and I didn't get into the college of my choice. And my life would have been richer had I, but maybe not. What did it really matter? Because here at Foxcroft, I became a voracious reader and my experience here led me to a life of learning and observing and of trying to show through a camera the essence of whoever or whatever I was photographing. As a photographer, my aim from the start was to get behind the scenes of history, to peel the onion a little, whether my subject was the US president or Steve Jobs or a foreign head of state. I worked to expose something of their character. It has been fascinating work. It has been my passion. As the great photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson described the thrill when you really feel you have made a picture, quote, "It's putting one's head, one's eye, and one's heart on the same axis." I will be brief in my advice, but as the commencement speaker, I'm supposed to give you some words of wisdom from my many years as a mother, spouse, photographer, and friend. There is an all-consuming argument whether a woman can have it all. I know you are familiar with it, and as you make choices in your life, you will be confronted with it. I cannot answer that question for you, but I honestly feel that with your grounding at Foxcroft and your further intellectual growth at college, perhaps graduate school, you will make the right choices for you, each of you. It may be hard for you to imagine, but when I was growing up, women like Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan were demonstrating for women to be taken seriously, to have access to jobs held mostly by men. Today, there is the issue of equal pay for equal work. There are more women in Congress, as head of corporations and foundations, and we are everywhere in the professional world. As Steinem once said, feminism has never been about a piece of the existing pie. There are too many of us for that. It's about baking a new pie. I have no doubt you will be out there baking pies, not cookies. We have come a long way since the 1970s. Class of 2015, take risks. That's the most important thing I'd say to you. Take risks. Whether you are leaving Foxcroft headed to your first college choice or not, know that you have the ability to write your own future from here on out. Nothing is set in stone, I promise you. I am blessed to be the mother of 2 boys. Neither of them were great students, but they were both fantastic boys, and they worked exceedingly hard in school. After 2 years of college with poor marks, it was suggested to my oldest son that he take a year off from his college before moving on to junior year. He hitchhiked into the center of Australia and worked on a station herding cattle. He returned to assist an artist in Washington pulling beautiful prints. These 2 totally different experiences worked magic, as did he. He returned to college to complete his final 2 years on the dean's list. After college, he worked in admissions at a small boarding school and then became a history teacher. Yes, the boy who nearly flunked out his second year became a wonderful history teacher. Our younger son headed to Latin America after college, where he ran a nonprofit in Paraguay and became bilingual. Both boys applied to graduate school, one in business and one in education. And lo and behold, both ended up being accepted by Harvard. So there we were in the spring of 1995 watching our 2 sons with less than stellar high school academic records walk across the stage to receive graduate degrees from Harvard University. As I said, nothing is set in stone. Go your own way. Choosing a spouse can be the most important choice in your life. I am blessed to still be married to the man I married 50 plus years ago. Mallory and I were married when we were very young, which was what you did back then. We both had very demanding careers and challenged when we were raising 2 boys. Both of our sons married in their 30s, and I think they approached marriage and children with far greater perspective and maturity than we did. One thing I've learned about maintaining a good relationship is to listen. Really listen. And don't forget to listen to yourself. If a relationship looks right but doesn't feel right for whatever reason, don't push it. You probably shouldn't be in it. Talking about pushing, there are times when it is absolutely necessary. as I learned early in my career. That sounds like an odd way to describe what I did, but as one of a handful of women professional photographers covering the White House back in the 70s, the only way to win sometimes was to push. But first, let me back up. After graduating from a 2-year college and working for Vogue magazine, Mallory and I married and moved back to Washington. I raised boys and photographed them a lot, as well as their friends for their family's Christmas cards. I also helped my mom in her very glamorous dress shop in Georgetown. I soon learned I wasn't cut out for the world of fashion, but it took a dear friend to say, "Follow your passion, Diana. Pick up your camera and start taking pictures." My first shots were weddings, bar mitzvahs, and authors' book jackets. One day, a friend at a small political magazine, the Washington Monthly, asked me to photograph produce for a labor story for their next issue. Well, the photographs of asparagus must have been pretty good, because they asked me to do more pictures for them. And I was launched. I had worked in John F. Kennedy's campaign and Robert Kennedy's too. I think I was falling in love with politics. The magazine had little money, but what they could provide me with were press credentials for Capitol Hill and the White House. With those all-important credentials, I started to freelance and began covering political events, building up a portfolio. I was a pretty good photographer, a fair photographer, and found that my ability to personally connect with people allowed me sometimes to capture photographs that others might not. I went to New York a lot on the train and visited all kinds of magazines, New York Magazine, The Village Voice, Business Week, and got some work. And then I persevered and went to see an editor at Money Magazine, part of Time Incorporated. This lady was a friend of a friend. She looked at my work as I stood there nervously, hoping she'd like it, and finally she said, "I am not in the least interested in your work." Sink went my heart. "But," she said, "I know who will be." At that, she called the picture editors at Time, People, and Fortune, and I saw them all that afternoon. That was my big break. I had my first photograph in Time in 1976. It was of the tennis star Chrissy Everett on a date with the former president's son, Jack Ford. It couldn't go anywhere but up from that. 2 years later, I started getting assignments at the White House. Time magazine today is on the net and a good website and competes with a very with it hard copy. But I am sure that if all you girls looked at a copy of Time magazine from yesteryear, you might say, who would read that? But in 1980, there was no internet. Imagine. There were really just a handful of major media outlets, 3 television networks, 3 major newspapers, and 3 new weeklies, including Time. Being a photojournalist for Time was, I felt, as good as it got. I thought we had the best equipment, the best editors, the best access, and the highest standards. You can see I'm biased. And I spent from 1980 to 2000 mostly following presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton all over the world. Further, I shot the presidential campaigns of Al Gore, John Kerry, and Hilary Clinton. It was an incredible job, but it was exceedingly difficult, very stressful, but above all, it was fun. Back to pushing. Many of my friends would think I headed down to the White House every morning simply to snap some pictures and go home. Oh, how I wish. When there was a photo opportunity, we would line up at the doors of the press room inside the White House and wait for the doors to open as if we were waiting to start the Kentucky Derby. The doors would open and we'd run, literally run out to the Rose Garden to try and get a desirable spot. And once I got there, shouldering over 50 pounds of camera equipment and holding a ladder, I'd grab my space and hope to heaven that I had the right spot. And nobody, an official or a Secret Service agent or a guest or a journalist or a fellow photographer, would impair my view. And many times they would. And that's when I'd push. First with the polite, Could you please move a little to your left? Then with a more forceful, you gotta get down. And sometimes even with a little shove, of course not to the Secret Service. I was a woman playing in a man's game, and back then it was physically demanding, technically challenging, and thoroughly exhilarating. What I was seeing and photographing was history. Time began to want me to take exclusive pictures of the presidents behind the scenes to run as black and white picture stories. They were eager to see these complex men away from the mics and lights, closer to who they really were. The hope was I could capture through a personal exchange, a gesture, a touch, or a look, something to show the humanity of our leaders. I was often granted permission for this behind-the-scenes work, away from the open photo ops where pushing was de rigueur. And part of it was because they trusted me. The manners, respect, and discretion I learned from my parents and from here at Foxcroft School allowed me in the room. As women, and by looking out at you, women who want to make a difference in this world, you will be constantly challenged. Never, ever accept someone telling you that you can't do it. Whether it's running a marathon, dating the most attractive man or woman you've ever met, getting into the graduate school of your dreams, or succeeding in a line of work that may be difficult and potentially filled with people not like you. If I had listened to everyone who said I'd never amount to a hill of beans as a photojournalist, I would never have been able to get the view of history that I had. If I had succumbed to the teasing, or was it torment, of the male photographers in the White House press corps, I wouldn't have lasted very long. And if I hadn't worked hard to get better and better as a photojournalist throughout my career, I wouldn't have had the honor of seeing my photographs on the cover of Time magazine many times, or in fact, of addressing you here today. Finally, friends and family. Each of you has the potential to be a mother, spouse, or professional, or none of the above, or you may choose to be the center of the family, the nurturing one, or not. But all of us have friends. Beyond family, they are the most important ingredient to a fulfilling and enjoyable life. You are graduating today with probably the best friend or friends you have ever had. Hold tight to these friendships. Many of them will remain with you for the rest of your life. You know that life is full of ups and downs and unspeakable sadness. And being able to share with these friends sometimes makes all the difference. My friends have sustained and supported me throughout my life. My best piece of advice about friendship is to give as much as you possibly can, and then give more. And communicate with your friends and family. A real live conversation, not an instant message. And family, the most important of all. Among many things I learned from my mother were color, line, composition, and to appreciate paintings and frescoes in so many museums from the Vatican to Verona. From my father came my interest in athletics and the love of Thomas Hardy, Robert Frost, and Edna St. Vincent Millay. Here is something novel suggested by my son, Willie. He wanted you to write your parents a letter every month from college. Not an email, not a text. Take out a piece of paper, a real paper, put a real pen to it, and write a letter about anything on your mind. In case you don't know, he said, you'll need something called a stamp for your letter. And your parents' address does not have a .com or a .org at the end of it. But the letter, handwritten, will mean the world to them. And it will make you actually check your spelling rather than having your iPhone do it for you. As soon-to-be graduates of Foxcroft School, whether as Fox or Hound, you leave with an exceptional education, wonderful friendships, deep wisdom, and the care and support of your teachers and family. You are blessed young women. Cherish what you have learned here about competition and sportsmanship, about an understanding heart, to truly hear your spouse, your kids, your friends, about respect and honor, your ingrained sense of integrity, and believe in yourself. Be true to yourself. Remember to be loyal to the royal in thyself, as Foxcroft's beloved founder, Miss Charlotte, used to tell us all those many years ago. Don't ever, ever give up on yourself. And don't forget to enjoy every day, to be generous and generous in your commitments. Remember your community service here and what it meant. And don't ever lose your sense of humor. It will help you in so many situations. Let me just quickly tell you this story. I was photographing Ronald Reagan in 1987. It was a very important full-page photograph in the Oval Office of Reagan and two of his new appointees, the Chief of Staff and the National Security Advisor. An assistant was helping me with lights and big umbrellas, with my camera behind me mounted on a tripod. There were many of Reagan's aides also in the room. The clock was ticking. A courier was waiting outside the Oval Office to fly the film to Time in New York, as we were on deadline. Having introduced myself to the gentleman and told them where to stand, I took a step backwards towards my camera, and my left elbow knocked off a carafe of water on the president's desk. Water fell all over the floor. The light blue rug turned dark blue. There was dead silence as the stewards hurried in with sponges from every corner in the room. I was mortified and horrified. Without losing a beat, President Reagan turned to the assembled and to me and said, "Well, at least it wasn't tomato juice." What a guy. With his humor, he saved one very embarrassed photographer. So hone that sense of humor and that understanding heart. Consider public service or volunteering where help is needed and budgets are small. Take time off to read a book quietly. The world really is your oyster. Run for office. Follow Foxcroft's Millicent Fenwick to Congress, Christy Whitman to the New Jersey governorship. And if anyone had told me when I started shooting pictures back in the time of Gerald Ford's presidency that in my lifetime there might be a female president, I would never have believed it. I felt it would always be a boys' club forever. It's time for a woman in the White House. Good luck, class of 2015. Give your parents and your friends and those wonderful teachers who've spent so much time with you a big hug and a kiss today. And thank you very much for asking me to come.